So in the last video, I put emphasis on how the Young Turks responded to Tucker Carlson's controversial remarks, but in this video, I'm going to talk about other media outlets and as well as this particular interview on CNN that caught my eye, and also how the Pentagon responded to Tucker Carlson's remarks. And really quick, I'm going to show you some highlights of what those comments were. But I do suggest you go and watch the other video first for a more detailed preface to this entire issue. So here's a few highlights from what Tucker Carlson said.
A top advisor to the Chinese government declared that the country was experiencing a very different kind of threat, a more profound threat. The problem, he said, was a national masculinity crisis. Chinese boys, quote, have been spoiled by housewives and female teachers, and they were becoming, as a result, quote, delicate, timid, and effeminate. In essence, they were becoming people who might listen to someone like Tony Fauci. Left unchecked, said the Chinese government advisor, the feminization of Chinese boys would, quote, inevitably endanger the survival and development of the Chinese nation. In January, China's government acted on this recommendation. The Education Ministry of China released a notice entitled Proposal to Prevent the Feminization of Male Adolescents. The goal was to, quote, cultivate students' masculinity. Have you seen this on other channels, by the way? Kind of interesting, isn't it? China won't explain the reasoning behind this plan, but there are some clues. Last year, we learned that China has quickly developed the world's largest naval force. In 2015, China had 255 battle force ships. Now they have more than 360. And many of those ships are more capable than anything in the American naval fleet. So how are we responding to this? Well, at the White House yesterday, Joe Biden addressed it effectively. What's the American military's response? Here's what Joe Biden said.
Some of it's relatively straightforward work, where we're making good progress designing body armor that fits women properly, tailoring combat uniforms for women, creating maternity flight suits, updating requirements for their hairstyles. And some of it is going to take an intensity of purpose and mission to really change the culture and habits that cause women to leave the military.
So we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars. It's a mockery of the U.S. military. While China's military becomes more masculine as it's assembled the world's largest navy, our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, whatever feminine means anymore, since men and women no longer exist. The bottom line is it's out of control, and the Pentagon's going along with this. Again, this is a mockery of the U.S. military and its core mission, which is winning wars.
So as you can see, what Tucker Carlson was saying, he put himself in this position where he sounds sexist as hell. But he was referring to two items. One was pregnant women in the military. He was criticizing this idea, and he did it in a mocking way. He did it in an insensitive way, but he had a point there, like a point that you don't have to agree with, you don't have to disagree with. And I'm not even saying that he put forward this in a good way, right? He didn't talk about this in a good way. He should have done more research beforehand. He chose to be sensational. This is how he is. But was he referring to all women? Now, I think people got the idea that he was referring to all women because he chose these words masculine and feminine. Now, I'm explained in the other video that it was the Chinese report. He's responding to the Chinese report that said that the Chinese army has a masculinity crisis, right? Quote unquote masculinity crisis. And the words that were used were that Chinese boys and had been spoiled by housewives and female teachers, and as a result, they become delicate, timid, and effeminate, right? And you certainly, let's exclude that word effeminate for a moment. Delicate and timid. Do you want your soldiers to be delicate and timid? Now, I realize these are terms that are, if you want to call it traditionally feminine, to make things clearer, these are traditionally feminine attributes or things we associate with femininity. I'm not saying rightly, I'm saying within the history of male and female gender roles in this country and abroad, these tend to be concepts that we associate with femininity, being delicate, being timid. And, that sucks. I'm glad that we as a society are moving away from that, right? But however, the word retains meaning even today within within academia, within sociology, within talking about concepts like toxic masculinity, within talking about even transgenderism and gender theory. Masculine and feminine are words and they have meaning. And so Tucker Carlson, in an unusual sort of usage of these adjectives, is contrasting the quote-unquote masculine or aspirationally masculine Chinese army to the quote-unquote feminine army being cultivated, or femininity being cultivated in Joe Biden's under Joe Biden. Now, this is not me saying that. This is what Tucker Carlson. I'm just wanting you to understand his argument. So, what are those feminine attributes? Well, Joe Biden had mentioned maternity flight suits, and he mentioned more, I guess allowing for more latitude in female hairstyles, right? So Tucker Carlson is saying, well, that's Joe Biden's emphasis, whereas China is emphasizing, having a larger Navy. And I believe Tucker even calls this masculine, right? This idea of having a larger Navy. Tucker Carlson's presentation was admittedly awful, but at the same time, when you look at it, when you look at the transcript, when you listen to the video, it does not say all women. He is not referring to all women. So Raw's Story actually covered this story well, in my opinion, because they put their emphasis on the criticism of having pregnant women in the military. And I'm just going to read a little excerpt, and it's going to feel nitpicky on my part, but at the same time, I want to talk about how news media covered this issue. So Raw Story says, Fox News' Tucker Carlson called pregnant women in armed forces a mockery of our military. And this excerpt reads, Carlson then turned to attack women in the military after it was revealed that flight suits would be made to accommodate pregnant mothers. Okay, no. This article is a good article, but, again, do I sound nitpicky? I'm just saying that he attack all women, no. But anyways, the next sentence says, most women who are pregnant go on to take maternity leave or avoid combat while pregnant. Great. Spoke directly to what Tucker Carlson was saying about pregnant women. Said, she made a good point. This is something Tucker Carlson hopefully would have mentioned in a follow-up, but didn't. Right? So how did the Pentagon respond to what Tucker Carlson had to say? From the Defense Department, Press Secretary Smite's host that dissed diversity in U.S. military. And the article reads, the United States military is the greatest the world has ever seen because of its diversity, Pentagon Press Secretary John F. Kirby said during a news briefing this morning. Kirby addressed this because a cable show host used his show to denigrate the contributions of women in the military and to say the Chinese military is catching up to the U.S. military because it does not allow women to serve in the percentage the United States does. Okay. No, Kirby is having a conversation with a phantom because that's not at all what Tucker Carlson was saying. Agree or disagree with Carlson, it's not what he was saying. I don't think it does us any good to speak in a non sequitur fashion. It's like straw manning your opponent, essentially. You're making claims that he never made and then smacking him down, right? Tucker Carlson never talked about how we need to have less women in our military, and then that was the issue, right? Do I expect, top Pentagon officials to know what Tucker Carlson said, or to listen to the video more than once, or to listen to news media, or to bypass news media and listen to what Tucker Carlson had to say rather than listen to the reporting of what Tucker Carlson said? No, I really don't expect that. But if you're going to issue some sort of response, I kind of would hope you would listen to it or have somebody listen to it. I don't know. I do understand it's easy to make that confusion because of the odd usage of the word feminine. So at the same time, man, you're misrepresenting Carlson, and Carlson sucks. And I don't like the fact that misrepresenting the guy actually makes the guy, I feel like if you're to call this a sport, right? That's us losing points and him gaining points every time you mischaracterize him, right? So this article continues, no job, and this is Kirby speaking, no job in the military is barred. I believe this is Kirby speaking. Anyways, it says, no job in the military is barred to women, the press secretary noted. Yes, that is Kirby speaking. I'm sorry. No job in the military is barred to women, the press secretary noted. They fly jets, fight in infantry squads, drive tanks, command warships, and soon to lead combatant commands. And then it notes a number of people that Joe Biden has put in high positions in the military that are female. Again, you're speaking to a person that doesn't exist, because Carlson never argued that, was never talking about all women. As far as random news, I'm going to give you random news headlines and tweets and etc. that were put out in response to Tucker Carlson. Here's the New York Times. Let's see. The Pentagon condemns Tucker Carlson's sexist remarks about women in the military. Okay, I have to presume that the New York Times is taking this stance that Tucker was talking about all women. Okay, what about ABC? Ranks push back on criticism of pregnant women in the military. And the byline says, a Fox News host suggested pregnant women made a mockery of the U.S. military. Good. I mean, ABC's headline, yeah, the headline is spot on as far as what Tucker Carlson was saying. Good, great. Here's a tweet from the New York Times article. I already read the headline too, but the tweet within that article says, at Tucker Carlson and at Fox News, I have served almost 20 years in the Army. I have been pregnant 5 times in uniform and served over 4 years in Iraq. How dare you say women are a mockery to the military? And I think, he wasn't saying women. If you were to say, if she could modify that tweet and say, how dare you say pregnant women are a mockery to the military? Great. Then accurate characterization of what Tucker Carlson said. And I know it may feel obnoxious that I'm putting so much emphasis on getting it right as to what he said. And you're like, well, Tucker Carlson is the enemy. Who cares what he actually had to say? No. I mean, you want to be represented correctly by your political adversaries. You should also represent what they had to say correctly. That's how we have a dialogue. That's how we know who's right and wrong, right? Otherwise, you're just arguing with a non-entity, right? So what the U.S. Army tweeted, I'm an American soldier, I am a warrior and a member of a team, #Soldiers Creed, and has a picture of a woman in uniform. And Tammy Duckworth, who is a veteran who lost both legs in combat, she says in her tweet, fuck Tucker Carlson, while he was practicing his two-step, America's female warriors were hunting down Al-Qaeda and proving the strength of American women. Happy belated International Women's Day to everyone but Tucker, who even I can dance better than. But in any event, how did CNN talk about it? CNN talked about it in a number of shows. But the clip that I want to play is between host Don Lemon and a guest, a soldier, Major MJ Hagar. I really liked this interview. The first half I didn't like so much, which I'll play first, but the second half I liked more. Here's what the guest had to say.
Joining me now, one of the incredible women who put her life at risk to protect this country, and that is Major MJ Hagar. Thank you so much, Major. I really appreciate you joining us this evening, and thank you for your service. So you're a woman and a veteran. What was going through your mind when you heard those comments?
Yeah, it's difficult. A couple things went through my mind. One, clearly he's never served. I was involved with the fight to open ground combat jobs to women. And we found a lot of times, and in my own combat experience, I found that the people who were the loudest against it were the people who've never served in combat. I would say that those who have experience, with the bullets flying and really in the mix, don't care what color you are, what gender you are, who you love, what your politics are. Competence is everything. Can this person cover my 6? That's all we care about. So you find like the real operators not weighing in and saying these types of things, but the wannabes or the people who are insecure.
So Major MJ Hagar, what she said that soldiers with experience with bullets flying don't care what color you are, your gender, or who you love. They care about who can cover my 6. Great. Unfortunately, it's sort of non sequitur to what Tucker Carlson said because, again, it's built on that misinterpretation that Tucker Carlson was talking about all women. Now, this was everywhere, so it wasn't just her. It was all over the media. But let's get to the second part of the interview because this guest really shines in the second part.
Really what's going on here is people like Tucker Carlson see a pregnant woman warrior who, by the way, we don't send, 8-9 month pregnant women into combat anyway. The flight suits are because people are serving in a job, and the flight suit is an indicator of that job. It's also something that you earn through going through pilot training and that type of thing. But what we find is these people who see these women doing these jobs and are threatened by it and think, gosh, I couldn't do that. They feel the need to hold us down and try to pull us down. But luckily we have so many women, men and women, but we do have women serving bravely on the front lines and in support roles, keeping us safe. And I sleep better at night knowing that.
So she made some great points about how the maternity flight suit doesn't mean she's out there flying around. It means that it's an indicator of her job, of her status, right? So that's a great point. It spoke directly to what Tucker Carlson said, or directly to the fact that Tucker Carlson put that image up of a woman in a maternity flight suit. So relevant, great, that's good. But it was silly that she made this argument that criticizing pregnant women in the military equals men or Carlson himself being threatened by women being in the military. That's silly. And it's silly to say that this criticism of pregnant women in the military is what she said. She said holding us down and pulling us down. So pulling women down, right? Or if she's going to make that argument, she could make that argument, right? But just saying that, what is this based off of? You got to say what it means, right? Or say what you mean. You could make the argument it's pulling women down because pregnancy is the top reason women leave the military. Therefore, this is an attack on women because we'd have women's chance at having a military career overall would be diminished, right? For women in general, because anybody could get pregnant, right? So you could make that argument. But people weren't making that argument. They were just assuming Tucker Carlson was attacking all women. Presumably based off the remarks on femininity in the military. Now, what about Tucker Carlson? Did he take any of this criticism to heart? There were a lot of good points made by the person that I just showed that was on CNN's show, that the major, and then also by Anna Kasparian, but not just exclusively to them, but just elsewhere in the media. Seems like if you had your own show and you generated all this controversy, you might want to actually make a follow-up that addresses some of these points, where people are right, where people are wrong. Well, to my knowledge, as far as what I've read that of his transcripts that came after this, there hasn't been anything like that. But his emphasis has been on the Pentagon targeting him and the U.S. Army and all of this. And, he's using words like, oh, this is unprecedented that the Pentagon would focus on a journalist in this fashion. But he's playing this martyr. He's being silly. Oh my God, it's unprecedented. Whatever, man. As far as why did this happen? Why did all of this happen to begin with? Why was Carlson misrepresented so widely? Why was everybody so confident Tucker Carlson was talking about all women? Well, there's a number of reasons. And one of them is that Tucker Carlson, as I said at the very beginning of this video, is kind of an asshole. And when someone says something that is arguably sexist, right? Or it takes another reading or another look to actually double check, well, is this sexist? Is this what he means? We tend to not give that benefit of the doubt to someone we already have a lot of negative preconceptions about, right? He doesn't get our benefit of the doubt. Let's say it was Bernie Sanders, right? Which in my neck of the woods, the media I watch, they would be more likely to give someone like Sanders the benefit of the doubt if he said something like that. They say, did he mean that? I don't know. Let's take another look. We don't do that when the person is a jerk. I feel like we should do it for everyone, right? I know it's time consuming, but especially media pundits, their job is to get it right. But, so that's one reason, right? Tucker Carlson is an asshole. That's part of our cognitive bias, right? We're biased in that we see an asshole, he's alleged to do an asshole thing, he probably did the asshole thing, right? That's how we think. Also, and this is an important one, the odd use of the word feminine in this context. Now, he, as I already explained, Tucker Carlson springboarded off the way China was using the word masculine and masculinity crisis. And I've already talked about previous contexts at the very start of this video where we use the word masculine, let's say toxic masculinity, or we talk about femininity and masculinity in the context of gender theory and when talking about transgenderism. And that is not something that's sort of in a pocket where barely anyone knows about this conversation. It's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. Everyone knows masculine, feminine can mean, it doesn't necessarily mean women and men, right? It means features, attributes, right? And so it's understood. And yet everyone got it wrong. But it wasn't, I wouldn't hold it against someone to get it wrong at first reading, right, of Tucker's remarks. Because it is an odd usage of the word feminine. Who describes the military as feminine? Again, in the context, Chinese military used it first, masculinity crisis in the army. Tucker juxtaposed it to what Biden was doing and called this a feminine approach, or however Tucker phrased it. He was doing that contrast of China and the U.S. If China hadn't used that word masculinity crisis, I'm sure different adjectives would have been used. But this is how Tucker chose to present it. So it also let me note there, the historical backdrop is there. Republicans do have a history of opposing women in the military. So you put all of these things I mentioned together, right? The historical backdrop, the Tucker Carlson being an asshole, the weird use of the word feminine in this context of the U.S. military in a way that's undesirable, right? We're speaking of femininity as an undesirable feature in the U.S. military. Then altogether, this is why people thought Tucker Carlson was saying all women. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Really, this presentation was less to do about what I think of what Tucker said, and more to do more related to why people came to their conclusions about what Tucker said. I'm not on Tucker's side. That guy. If I were Tucker, I would correct myself, right? I would say, look, I was being too harsh when talking about pregnant women. You should not say that pregnant women are, how did he phrase it? A disgrace to the U.S. military, or make a mockery of the U.S. military. You need to rephrase that shit. If I were him, I would take responsibility for the poor phrasing choice, and any other phrasing choice, like whenever he said pregnant women are going to fight our wars. I would say that was a poor phrasing choice. I need to talk about pregnant women versus combat readiness. And, he's not a responsible guy. He's not going to take that approach. He's the guy that he likes to say sensational stuff. It gets him rating, da-da-da-da-da. At the same time, even though he's that type of a person, objectively, looking at his remarks, talking about masculinity and femininity, they had a meaning, right? It didn't refer to all women, right? It was referring to attributes. Again, in the Chinese report, what did it say? Timid, delicate, and effeminate were the three adjectives when talking about masculinity crisis in that Chinese report. What is the opposite of delicate and timid? Strong, unafraid. Things you want in a military, right? What are the traditional masculine attributes? Not that men should be, not that men are, not that women should be, not that women are, but strong, not delicate. Powerful, right? Those are the opposite of those effeminate traits, right? What sort of represents delicacy really well? And I know I'll have to do some explaining here, but pregnancy, when you are in a late-term pregnancy especially, when you see someone that is 8 months pregnant and wobbling around, you're worried, you don't want to accidentally elbow them, you don't want them to fall over, you don't want, you want to say, can I get that, da-da-da. That's why it makes sense to use the adjective delicate. I understand that pregnant women are capable of doing quite a lot. And even I was seeing various testimonials from U.S. Army personnel about how like a 12-week pregnant woman was capable of running quite fast and was like the fastest runner in their group. So yeah, pregnant women are quite capable early on in their pregnancy. But overall, I get it. I get what Tucker Carlson was saying. I think we need to be fair in characterizing his words correctly. When we criticize him, by all means criticize him, but don't mischaracterize him.